Hi, this is Brian with Webbigator, and today I'm going to be walking you through creating an iOS style switch button using CSS3 and jQuery. We're going to be following along this tutorial by Srinivas Tamata, and he's agreed to allow us to create this video of his iOS style switch buttons. Let me go ahead and switch into Adobe Brackets. And here I've downloaded the iOS switch.html source file that he's provided us, and I've cleaned it up a little bit, but this is the completed solution. Let's take a look at this in our browser. Alright, if I launch this up in live preview, you can see that I've got my buttons here. They look just like iOS 8, and I can toggle them back and forth. It's a great animation. We're going to go ahead and dive into the code. So let's get started. Let's create a new file. Oh, I didn't want to do that. File new. Alright, and this is going to be a simple HTML file. Let me go ahead and save that. And I'm going to just go ahead and put this in my downloads folder. And I'm going to call this switch.html. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a title. iOS 8 switches. And then next thing we need to do is include jQuery, and we're using the Google Ajax API CDN. I'll go ahead and drop that in here, make it HTTP and HTTPS agnostic. And then let's go ahead and start coding up our HTML. The HTML for the iOS 8 switches is really pretty simple. And part of the beauty of this is the before and after pseudo elements that we're going to be using in our CSS. So let's create a label. And inside there we're going to have our checkbox. And also inside the label is where we're going to add a div, and we're going to give this a class of switch, and this will just be empty. So let's save that. Let's take a quick look in our live preview here, and all we see is a checkbox, and we're going to put our switch down here below. Alright, let's go ahead and stub out a script tag here. So text JavaScript. Oops, it wants to indent this all. Oh, I actually want this in the head. Okay. And then let's also do a style tag in the head as well. And the first thing we want to do is just go ahead and put a style on the body tag. So we'll do the body, and we're going to put a font family of Arial. Okay, now let's start styling up our switch. Alright, first we're going to hard code the width. We're going to set that to 62 pixels. And we're going to put the height at 32 pixels. And then let's go ahead and give it a background color. And we're going to use E5. We'll set the Z index to 0, so it's all the way in the back. And we'll reset our margin and padding to 0 as well. Alright, so right now we just have a square, really. This is our div. We've given it a height, and we've given it a width, and we've set a background color. So now let's go and transition this so it's a nice looking oval. Let's see, before we do that, we're going to put the appearance, set that to none, and we're going to make sure there's no border, and reset the cursor, or change the cursor so it's a pointer. And let's look. So now when I hover over it, I get this pointer. Next, we're going to set the position to relative, and I'll come back to this because that's going to be important. But our switch is kind of our outer element that's going to hold the toggle that we're going to go back and forth. And so we're going to set this parent to relative, so that way we can set these pseudo elements to absolute positioning. So that way the absolute position will be within the relative. So let's keep going. Now we're going to round our rectangle. As you remember, it's a rectangle here. So let's round this with a border radius. And we're going to set the border radius to 16 pixels. Great. Now you can see I have this nice looking gray oval. And I don't need to, but I will put the browser specific border radius declarations in here. And we'll do WebKit as well. Oops. Okay, now that we've got our background, we're going to create another element inside here, and it's going to be white. And what we're gonna do is basically create it one pixel smaller, so that it looks like this background image becomes just a line, or just like a border. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to use the before pseudo element. And we're going to give that element some content. It's just going to be an empty string with a space. And like I said, we're going to set this to absolute positioning. And then we're going to set the left over 1 pixel, and we're going to set the top down 1 pixel. The width is going to be 60 pixels. And the reason for that is the height of our switch up here is 62. And that is all the way from the top to the bottom. And we want a 1 pixel border, kind of like a pseudo border that we're going to create. We're going to use this before to fill in with white. And what's going to be left is this gray color. And we want 1 pixel to show on the top, 1 pixel to show on the bottom. So that's why we're going to go 2 below this. So we've got 60, and then we're going to want 1 on the left and 1 on the right, so we're going to do 30 pixels for our height as well. There we go, 30 pixels. And then, like I said, we're going to set this background color to white. And so that this floats on top of our other element, we're going to increase the z-index of this to 1. And then we also want to do the same border radius. So let's just copy paste those out. And save that. And now let's take a look. Cool. You can see here that now we have just the border of our original element showing up. So I'm actually going to break the live preview, but I want to inspect this real quick so we can get kind of a good look at what's going on behind the scenes here. So here's my switch element. You can see that it's got the background and the height and width, and we round that. And then here's this pseudo before element showing up now. And you can see I've given that some content. And if I take this off, you'll see that there's still our switch. And then now when I add this back, you can see we're filling this in with a white, with an element, the pseudo element before, and we're filling it in with white, which just leaves the 1 pixel border all the way around, which is kind of a cool little trick that we can do. Okay, now we want to add our actual switch, which is going to fall in here. Let me go back and reload. It's called iOS switch here. This is the demo. Remember how we have this round, it looks like a circle, and that's what actually is going to toggle back and forth. So let's go ahead and get that set up. Close these. Alright, so this is now we're going to use the after pseudo element. Again, we're going to give it some content. It's just going to be a single space. And then the height is going to be 29 pixels, and the width is going to be 29 pixels. Let's save that. Let's actually take a quick look, see if it shows up yet. It's not there yet because I haven't given it any color. So let me go ahead and do that. We do background, and we'll make it white. When you take a look, it's in there. But it's just not showing up yet, so let's keep going. Next thing we want to do is give it a border radius as well. And the border radius is going to be 28 pixels. So that way it's completely rounded. Again, just like the before, we're going to do absolute positioning here. And we're going to set the absolute positioning so that it's down one from the top, and again to the right one from the left. We also want to set the z-index, and this is probably why it wasn't showing up before, but we're going to set the z-index to 2. So now our stack kind of looks like this one here is at 0, and then we've got our white background to give us our nice circle. That one's at 1, and then our actual toggle switch, which is going to be rounded as well, and that's going to be at 2. Let's save this, take a look at it in live preview. And it's still not showing up. It's in there, but because it's just white, we need to also give it a little bit of a shadow so we can see it. So let's do that now. So we're going to use the box shadow CSS3 property, and we're going to set that to 0, 2 pixels, 5 pixels, and the color of 999. And now if we come back, there it is. So there's our shadow. And then the next thing we want to do is specify some transitions. So as we transition the left, we're actually going to transition this left. We're going to move this from 1 pixel, where it is on the left now, and then we're going to move this over, and we're going to move it over 32 pixels, so that way this shows up on the right when the switch is toggled on. So let's go ahead and let's set that switch to toggle. So we'll do switch on, and switch on before, and then we're gonna, when the switch is on, we're gonna set the background color to this really cool blue that looks just like it does on iOS. That's 4CD964. And then also when we switch this on, we want to move over our dot, our round circle, our after pseudo element. And we're going to move that over 32 pixels and make sure that this is marked important so that way it gets picked up and overrides the other declarations. And then let's go back here and add those transitions in. So our transition, we're going to specify the duration, and we're going to set that to 300 milliseconds. And it looks like he's also doing the WebKit transition duration, so we'll set that to the same 300 milliseconds. And it looks like I also did not declare the WebKit box shadow, so just to match the code, let's also do the WebKit box shadow. We'll just copy paste from there. Okay, cool. So that should do all of our CSS. So let's see if we look at this in Chrome. We have our switch here, but we can't move it, and our transition isn't firing anything because we need to use jQuery now to add or to toggle that class. If you remember, we're using this class of switch on. I can show you what it's going to look like, though. I can just add that in myself. So if I just go in here and do switch on, you'll see right there. Did you see it move? So it moved over, and our nice background color is now filling in here in both. We're filling that background in both the switch and the switch before. So both the before element and the switch is getting this new background color, so that way it doesn't look like there's a border anymore. And I can go ahead and remove this. And when I hit enter, you'll see we had a nice little transition. It moved over to left 1 pixel. And we remove that background color. Cool. So now let's fire up some jQuery, and let's do that so that way when the user clicks on the switch, it'll toggle that class. Okay, I'm going to go back up to the top to my my script, and we want to get jQuery rolling with doing an anonymous function. We're going to use the shorthand version here. The dollar function. This is going to fire on DOM content load. Notice, just to show you here, actually I can just switch back to our original source, that our author was using the dollar document ready, but we can use, it's the same thing, just using the dollar, and it's a little shorter and cleaner. So we'll do that, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add an on-click handler to our switch. So let's get our switch using the class selector, and then we're going to add the click event handler, and that's going to call an anonymous function. And then inside that function, we're just going to simply toggle the switch on class. So we'll do $this. This refers to the current element, the current switch that was the target of the event, the click event. And then we'll toggle the class. And the class name that we're using is switch on. We'll close our anonymous function and our click handler, hit our semicolon, hit save, and then let's fire this up in our live preview. And now if we click on it, looks like I made a mistake. Let's take a look. Aha! I made this. It's a common practice for me to make that without the protocol specification, but let's add that back in and reload. And looks like on line 11 I didn't end something correctly. Aha! And then end that. There we go. Now let's try it. Looks like we have no errors in our console. And now if we click on it, we can see that we are toggling our iOS 8 switch. And we can see here that the checkbox as well gets toggled, so that way we can use that as part of a form submission. We would just hide that, that checkbox. Great. Well, I hope you've enjoyed following along creating this iOS style switch button using CSS3 and jQuery. And thank you very much to the author of the blog for letting us create this video for everybody. And be sure to go to 9lessons.info to get some more cool tips and tricks using jQuery and CSS3.